Hello, everyone. Welcome to Decoding Downtowns, brought to you by Vistity. In this podcast, we dive deep with leaders from business improvement districts across the nation, revealing the strategies that are shaping the future of urban development and economic growth. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. It's Jamie Schwartzman, and today I'm excited we're going to Colorado Springs. We'll be speaking with Susan Edmondson. She is the president and CEO of the Downtown Partnership of Colorado Springs. And Susan, how are you today? Welcome to the podcast.
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Great to have you here. So tell us a little bit about downtown Colorado Springs and what's going on there.
Well, it's an exciting time in Colorado Springs. So we're about an hour south of Denver, a city of about metro area, about 750,000 folks. And our downtown is going through about $2.5 billion in recent investment, right? So we're seeing a real surge in our city center of everything from new multifamily projects, new hotels, a lot of exciting activity going on. So it's been a pretty exciting time. And I would also say we sort of persevered through the pandemic, perhaps better than some urban areas. And that's been encouraging to see too.
Well, you're lucky there. Tell us a little bit about the Downtown Partnership, how it's organized, how it's structured and financed.
So, like a lot of downtowns, everyone's a little different. We're essentially 4 organizations. So Downtown Partnership is a business membership organization. It is technically, because I know some folks care about these things, it's a 501c4, which does mean we do have the ability in political advocacy to perhaps do a few things that other organizations may not. We rarely utilize that opportunity, but it does exist legally, if you will. And our partnership serves as the management entity for 3 other affiliates. So we have a 501c3 charitable nonprofit, right? That's where the fun things are, whether it's First Friday art walks, ice skating, public art, all the kind of cool activities. Then we manage a business improvement district downtown, and we also have a downtown development authority. So we're all just one staff serving 4 different agencies.
And how did the funds come in?
Well, our bid and DDA are funded through a property tax mill levy. And of course, our DDA also has the ability to do tax increment financing. Partnership, again, business membership arm. So we have members, not exclusively downtown businesses. You could be our local university or an auto dealership, or really anyone that believes it's important to have a strong heart to your city can be a member. And then, as I mentioned, with our charitable nonprofit arm, using that for individual donations, sponsorship grants. So we always say it's really just tools in a toolkit to make a great downtown, right? And I always say too, of course, there are important legal separations among these different entities, but my feeling is just I want people to come downtown and have a great experience. And they don't need to know that the bid planted the flowers and the DDA helped that small business and the nonprofit helped put the public art up. They don't need to know those specifics as long as they have a great experience.
So president and CEO, what does that mean? What's that role and what do you do?
Yeah, so obviously then with that, I oversee our 4 entities. Sometimes that may mean I'm also executive director of an entity. So I also serve as executive director of our DDA. But our nonprofit and our bid also have their own executive director, who again, I still manage. We're still all part of the same family. But that also, it didn't used to be that way. And as we've grown over time, and I really have a fantastic team here. So that's taken some of the burden off of me, because as you can manage, and I'm sure many people watching your podcast who have multiple entities, when I tell some of my friends in the nonprofit world, say that's almost a board meeting every week, and they get pretty overwhelmed. So it's nice to have some of the organizations that, of course, I still am involved with, but don't have to get quite to the level of detail of the day-to-day by having an ED over some of those other entities.
And so how did you get into this work and why do you do what you do?
Yeah. Well, I think probably like a lot of folks in this world, it's not something, if you had asked me in high school, would I ever dream of doing what I'm doing today? That was never on my radar. And like a lot of folks don't even know that kind of opportunity existed. I don't have a background in urban planning or anything like that. So I actually started as a journalist and worked in newspapers. And that was in California and Nevada. and also kind of was the job opportunity that brought me here to Colorado, mostly in print journalism. And then I wish I could say I could see where that industry was headed, right? It has really been through challenges the past decade or two. But while I was doing journalism, eventually became an arts and entertainment editor and worked on getting my master's in public administration. And at the time, my thinking was just, oh, this will be a good something else when I burn out on journalism. Then, frankly, the opportunity came up at that point to run a small foundation in our city that was focused on the arts. So it became kind of a nice transition. And I did that for many years, became involved in our downtown association while I was running that arts foundation. And then when the opportunity came up here at Downtown Partnership, I kind of threw my hat in the ring. And I think, looking back, I can see through lines in my career that, in the beginning, I never would have seen that pathway. But I think especially, obviously, the arts, really strong placemaking kind of component through arts. But then also with the MPA degree in nonprofit management, I think that organizational development piece of managing multiple entities, right? How do we all seamlessly work together, even though we're separate legal entities, but with a shared vision? So I think that component as well of how to help us function with multiple entities, yet a small staff, are some of the things that kind of led me to where I am now, which I still love. I've been doing this. I've been in this role for about 11 years, and I love it.
Cool. Hey, tell me a little, let's talk about economic development and what the organization is doing to support economic development.
Yeah, so we have a variety of tools, mostly through our Downtown Development Authority, to both help small business as well as larger development. So similar to many organizations, we have a variety of grants that we offer. I'll talk a bit about those. And of course, we have the ability to do tax increment financing. So our TIF has especially been helpful in one of our main goals, which was really to grow residential and multifamily properties downtown. We have had very few people living downtown. So we knew that was really important to have that base of folks who frankly support your small businesses and other entities. So through our TIF, we've been able to grow our multifamily units. We're right now at a point where we're opening about 2,000 units in these next 2 years, which for us is way beyond anything we've ever seen before. So our TIF has helped with that, as well as with a few commercial developments and certainly public realm improvements and other things. And then, through our grants, we do everything from more typical things, what some folks call facade grants, we call building enhancement grants, but are very much focused on the facade. We started offering tree canopy grants to businesses to improve our tree canopy and our streetscapes. And we also added something relatively new that we call a retail incentive grant. And that's really to diversify the offerings downtown for a more robust experience. So it's more like if you're bringing us something new that we don't have. We kind of say the joke around the office is like, if you're bringing us tacos, pizza, sushi, or burgers, thanks, rock on, you're not going to get a grant. But if you're bringing us a cheese shop or a Thai restaurant, or maybe something we don't have that we want to be able to offer folks, that there might be some support for getting that off the ground.
Hey, walk us through the mechanics of the TIF and kind of how that all works for those who may not understand it.
Sure. So the way we've structured our TIF, many cities may bond their TIF, if you will, and we never quite went down that path. What's interesting, when we created our DDA, it was way back around 2007. So if you can go back in time and think, oh, we created a TIF mechanism and then instantly went into a recession, right? So our base sort of went down. So there was really kind of several years in the beginning where we weren't really generating increment. So for us, we structure our TIF specific to that particular project or property, right? So it is a reimbursement agreement for that, be it whatever the project or new development may be. And so you may get a certain percentage of the increment that you are estimated to generate and over a certain number of years, right? And that's why like our agreements may not say you get $400,000 or, it may not have a specific dollar amount. It's going to kind of tell you instead percentage of increment that you generate, with capped on eligible expenses and over how many years. So that means each year we're making reimbursement payments on that project. And we can give folks a pretty good estimate of what they may generate over time. It may be more, it may be a little less. It's enough for them to understand kind of how to take it to the bank to finance, right? To have that be another tool to help finance the project. But for us, and given the time we were created, that was what made the most sense. Instead of, we did not have, say, one massive project that we could bond against that we knew would bring X millions over time. So kind of structuring it this way has been what's been most effective for us. And I would say another thing that's been super helpful in these past several years is we were designated as an opportunity zone. So that did also make downtown Colorado Springs really, we were sort of uniquely suited for that particular federal program that we were behind in some ways, but had a lot of opportunity. And so there were a lot of both local and out-of-state developers who saw that as a really good opportunity and started discovering downtown Colorado Springs through that.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the challenges that you guys are facing in economic development?
Yeah, I think for us, a few things we're seeing. Well, I'll back up to say we're a little different than some downtowns in what they're facing post-pandemic. For example, we are not having to look at converting office to residential. We entered the pandemic with a really tight office market and frankly exited the pandemic with it being pretty tight. Now that's loosened up a little bit, but we are not facing those challenges of massive, 3/4 empty buildings or something like that. So in a good way, we don't have some of those challenges, but I think the challenges we're facing now that really a lot of downtowns face is, we're at the point where we're becoming a victim of our own success, as there's been a lot of exciting activities that have been going on the past couple of years in our downtown. We're very mindful of, retaining our character and ensuring our small businesses can thrive. And so how we help those small businesses as leases are increasing, things like that are probably what we're really attuned to right now. We don't want to lose our unique character. And so we're really doubling down on how we can help our small businesses.
Hmm. And so, listen, we have a lot of place management executives who are watching.
Mhm.
What's working well for you, Susan? And what would you suggest that maybe they would want to think about?
Yeah, well, I think a couple things. One is, I know you may touch on this coming up, but how we use our data has been really important. And I think there is, right, that other thing that I also talked about, there's that kind of always a bit of that tension between small business and large development, and how you honor and manage that. Each needs each other, right? But making sure you provide attention to both is really important. I'll just mention by quick example, as I was talking about our concern for our small business owners. One of the new tools that we created through our DDA that we launched this year is what we call a loan program for tenant ownership. So it is a very low interest loan. It won't be enough to seal the deal, but it can really help in those few instances when a small business has the opportunity to buy their property. So whether it's the building they're currently in and leasing, or maybe another opportunity comes up within downtown, we know the more we can have tenant owners, that's really going to stabilize our small businesses, right? And so we've entered into one agreement thus far on that a couple months ago, and it was kind of an interesting story of a really cool little sort of bar nightclub, gay friendly, and also all their waiters and performers are singers, really like Broadway level talent. It's a really unique space. Long story short, it suffered a lot of smoke damage from a fire at a neighboring property. So they were displaced. So once they were displaced, we tried to help them out. They were able to find a property. They never had thought maybe they would become owners, but being able to help with a very low interest loan means they've closed on the property. They're working on some tenant improvements and will hopefully open this fall. And now we know they can be here for decades to come because now they're building equity. So it won't happen a lot, but I would hate to lose a great small business that maybe has a chance of owning if all those elements can just come together for them, and seeing what we can do to help.
And where's the financing coming from?
Really just through our TIF fund, right? So obviously, well, as I mentioned, for certain projects, we may enter into reimbursement agreements, but nevertheless, our overall TIF fund still grows. And so that to us is a very appropriate use of monies that support our plan of development, right? To, foster our small businesses as well. So there is still money within that TIF fund to go to occasional opportunities like this as they arise.
Boy, nice to have that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about data and the kind of data you're tracking, and kind of what data do you think people care the most about? And when I say people, investors, developers, the people that are making a big move in economic development.
Yeah. So we do publish an annual State of Downtown report. Within that, there is a whole variety of everything, right? So many of the standard things, right? Sales tax, property tax values, those kind of things. But, I think maybe my journalism background really helps in that idea of how you tell a story with numbers. So you always have to have the numbers, but then what does that mean, or what does it look like, and kind of putting a human face on it. For example, you can say things like your sales tax revenue in the district grew 3% last year, and maybe that's really great. But then if you saw that the city overall grew by 8%, well, then maybe that's not so meaningful. So you've always got to compare over time and compare against, whether it's a competitive set city or comparing against citywide or something. So being really mindful of not just the number, but what it means in context. I always love the time of year when we're working on that report, because even though I feel like I have a handle on things, sometimes until you really dive in, you start finding sort of other trends and other stories that are there. And I will say we're doing a lot more now with location intelligence data. So people visiting downtown, which is a really important number. Now, it doesn't always translate to people spending, but it is an important metric. And we've been able to see that we have essentially completely returned to pre-pandemic in terms of overall visitation to downtown. So we feel like we're on the right track. It's still challenging times out there, but we're using our visitation data more and more to understand where are people coming from, where are they going, and what does that mean?
So the economic development report, the annual report you're doing, how do you see that evolving in the future to be dashboards or data visualization, anything like that?
That's a great question. So a couple things we've done since we started our State of Downtown report, which was maybe 9 or so years ago, 8 or 9 years ago, we've been doing it. But one, we've realized we need to do quarterly market reports. So we do just kind of a one-pager front and back, so that some of that data is fresher, and whether that's hotel occupancy rates, some of those other metrics that I mentioned earlier. So one is having something that's a little, not just waiting for your annual data, right? But I think the other thing we're finding is really the importance of customized data, right? Anytime that I have a developer, investor inquiring about most anything, we will work to pull some fresh numbers, be that site specific if they're looking at a certain parcel, or whatever the case may be, that we know we have some of this data they could probably get themselves, whether they're on CoStar or this or that. Most folks may not take the time to do that. But also we are going to have sort of proprietary data. We are going to be the ones that can count business openings and closures and some of those other things a lot better than any individual. So I would say two things, more timely than just being annual, and then also customize it for every prospect you have out there in whatever ways. For us, we just want people to make good business decisions. It's not a good look on us if someone leases a property, puts a lot of money into tenant improvements, doesn't quite know what they're getting into, and then they close 6 months after opening. That doesn't look good, right? So obviously, we can't always be there before everyone signs on their lease or makes a business decision. But obviously, we're not brokers. We're not going to be the hard sell. We just want people to make the decisions that are best for them and go in with the best information to make that decision. Then it's up to them, right?
Okay, so we're basically August 2024. If we look ahead at the next short 12 months, what's hot for you and what's on your desk?
Well, a couple things for us, and this may not seem super sexy, but obviously we know there's not a lot of new vertical development. We have a lot under construction, but there's not a lot in the pipeline because financing is tough right now, right? And so while we are still very, very busy, it is a little bit different timing than a couple of years ago when there was just kind of nonstop activity on the development front. So I always feel like I don't even want to call this a lull because I feel like we're still really busy and working hard. But at times like these, those are also good times to look a little more inward and maybe either update plans or other kind of internal documentation that you're working on. So for us, we're in the midst of completing our sort of documented environmental sustainability plan that we've been working on for a while, completing our diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility plan. Those will also inform, we're about to undertake an update to our master plan. And our master plan is really sort of required by state statute as the sort of guiding document, plan of development for our DDA. That plan that we're currently working under is almost 8 years old. And frankly, these kind of documents can be 20-year plus documents, but we ended up accomplishing more in 8 years than we ever thought possible. So it's a good time for updating that. So I say all that because it's maybe not planning. Maybe it doesn't sound like the sexiest thing, but this is kind of the right time to be doing that before hopefully that next wave of massive economic development starts occurring when financing gets better in a year or two. And I think the other big thing we're looking at, right, when you talk about this next year is for us to have 2,000 residential units opening in the next year and a half. Again, for a city our size and a downtown our size, we have never had that amount happening all at once. So we've obviously beefed up our marketing specifically towards, future residents. Who is that person and how can we attract them to the urban lifestyle? And then that idea of once people are renting downtown and living downtown, how do we make that sticky for them that they're really going to enjoy living here and want to stay? So we do resident welcome kits. Every single new resident in an apartment gets like this little shopping bag full of information and offers and special activities. So we really want to make sure that people don't regret their choice to live here, but instead have a great experience, tell their friends how much they love living downtown and all of that. So we're going to be working a lot on, one, getting all those units leased up and helping our various property owners, but then two, making sure their residents have a super positive experience when they're living downtown.
Let's push the markers out maybe 5 years, 10 years. How do you see the trajectory of Colorado Springs?
Yeah. So it remains an exciting time for us as we've launched new attractions downtown. I hadn't really even mentioned that during COVID, a couple major projects came to fruition in that we opened an 8,000 seat soccer arena, a soccer field, a 3,400 seat hockey arena. And then we also opened the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum, which is also why it's a fun time right now as we're recording this, right? The Olympics are going on, and that's always a fun time in Colorado Springs because we're known as Olympic City. So there's a lot of cool activities related to that. So we want to lean into those new attractions and really ensure that they have a strong future. And I think the other thing that we're really focused on, in addition to what I mentioned earlier about just the constant attention to ensuring our small businesses can remain successful and keeping our unique character, we're really looking at our waterways downtown. So as we look longer term to the future, we have a plan called Creek COS, so COS being sort of the abbreviation for Colorado Springs, that is looking at the creek and water system that comes through our downtown and goes further south, and how we restore our riparian habitat, make it a better place for recreation and access to the water, and then certainly serve as an economic catalyst to not just to downtown, but to the whole city. And I see so much potential for that water project. It's really, really exciting.
So I ask all my guests this question. Let's play make-believe for a moment and pretend that I've handed you a magic wand and you're going to use it to cast a spell to promote the vitality of Colorado Springs. Susan Edmondson, how would you use your magic wand?
Well, you didn't limit me on wishes, but I'm sure I can't have 10 wishes. I would say two things. One, I just want a stable path for our small businesses, whatever way that looks. because I think it's only going to get harder, not just for us, but small business in general for years to come. And I would say the other really is, as I mentioned, that water project is when I look not just downtown, but across Colorado Springs of what's going to be transformative, where historically we will look back and be able to say, like many cities have, when they had a sort of neglected waterway, or maybe a waterway that used to be where industry was, and then over time became something else. What's kind of interesting too is our creek is right adjacent to where, frankly, right in the heart of our downtown, we had a coal-fired power plant that is right outside my window and being decommissioned as I speak. And so as we see that going down right on the edge of this waterway, I am super excited by what's to come as quickly as we can. Obviously, projects like this take many years, but there's so many good components to that already afoot. And I'm really excited that probably past my retirement, I'll be able to help even while I'm in this job. But it's something that for many, many years to come, being able to sort of be in our downtown and walk to our water and our amazing trail system that we have throughout Colorado Springs. And so that we can have this great like urban lifestyle, but you're going to be seamlessly able, you already are in some ways, to connect to our great outdoors. You don't have to get in a car and go to the mountains like, other mountain cities. In downtown Colorado Springs, you can walk outside your apartment and your Class A office and walk to a trail or a great mountain biking area, and again to this waterway. So that's probably what excites me the most when we think longer term.
Tell me a little bit more about the power plant. What's the vision for that?
Yeah, so that's still, if you will, in a visioning process. We have a municipal utility in Colorado Springs, so ultimately the more technical parts of its future will be decided by the board of the utility. We did do a visioning exercise with the community, and just for sort of a broad framework. And what came out of that was encouraging, in that this may sound simple, but really what we heard from the community was mixed use, right? Nobody said make it all parkland, or make it all skyscrapers, or make it all tiny homes. There wasn't like this like one overriding kind of image, if you will. People knew to make that a vibrant area that it needs a handful of things: a real anchor attraction, it needs respect for nature and the water, it needs people living there of all income levels, it needs some density and verticality. So we were just encouraged that that folks saw that there is both enough property and enough potential that it can serve the community in a variety of ways. So that's not necessarily a specific vision, but even just, kind of getting to the concept of mixed use as opposed to perhaps potential other uses is a good start.
What's if you were just to give me sort of like what the sentiment is around development in Colorado Springs? Do people embrace it? Do people reject it?
Yeah, I would say we have growing pains, right? And Colorado Springs has always been a relatively stable city, but then we kind of didn't necessarily quite start taking off maybe when we should have. But in recent years, the city is way at the top of the best places to live lists, and really kind of showing up nationally for its quality of life, which in the pandemic only got, if you will, further reinforced because our lifestyle here is so great. Short commute times and our connection to nature is really strong. So because of all that, we are seeing a lot of new activity, and I understand that creates pressure on, if you will, locals and long timers that may have this sort of golden, preserved in amber view of what their city was decades ago, right? So we downtown, we do have a task before us to, one, respect that change is hard, right? Not to just, if you will, make fun of people's viewpoints, but also to remind them of why infill and density matter, and that it doesn't mean your entire city will be more dense and urban, but you, as an economic driver, and for so many reasons, environmental reasons, just to have the heart of your city offer a little bit different lifestyle. I mean, we're really blessed in Colorado Springs that, look, if you want to live in a 4,000 square foot home in a 3-car garage on an acre, you can do that. But we also have to offer the urban walkable lifestyle that so many people want. And we're lucky that we can be a city that sort of offers all the variety, but we would be foolish to not make sure that we have that opportunity for folks who really love that urban lifestyle. And we need to do that, of course, in a way that respects our natural environment. It's a very beautiful community here. And I think that what kind of can distinguish us nationally is that you can get everything you love about being urban, right? Walkable, bikeable, coffee shops, breweries, all the things. But truly, boom, you can just walk outside your door and experience nature. And many other cities and beautiful areas don't have that kind of proximity. And that's something really special that we got to be careful about how we do it. But yeah, is there tension here, like many places of, I always got to remind folks too that, don't want certain things. And I'll be like, well, did you really enjoy that new restaurant? Well, that new restaurant is here because there's new patrons, there's new people, there's new businesses. We have elsewhere in the city, a new amphitheater's opening. Well, would that have been a good business prospect for someone 10 years ago to open that? Maybe not without all these other things, right? So growth and change can be hard, but it brings with it diversity, wonderful new restaurants, wonderful new independent businesses. Just going to a soccer game downtown and seeing the stands filled with thousands of families cheering. That's something we didn't have 3 or 4 years ago in our downtown. So reminding people that they're having wonderful experiences with their families, and you can't pick and choose. Those things work because of these new economic development opportunities and new people living here, right? And it's balance.
Hey, before we wrap up, tell us a little bit about how we can keep our eyes on downtown Colorado Springs and you in particular.
Oh, well, thanks for asking. Our website is downtowncs.com, which is both certainly a consumer-facing website with all the usual information, but also the more technical stuff of our 4 organizations. We're very active on Facebook and Instagram as Downtown Colorado Springs. Dipping our toe into TikTok, still trying to figure that out a little bit. And of course, we're also on LinkedIn as well as Downtown Colorado Springs. So would love for folks to check us out there and see our progress as we move along this path.
Susan, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Well, I really appreciate the time. Thanks for all you do.
Okay, and to our listeners, thank you for joining again for Decoding Downtowns. I'm Jamie Schwartzman. I'd also like to thank Vistity for sponsoring the podcast. And until we meet again, keep exploring and innovating in your district.
Thank you for joining us today for Decoding Downtowns. If you've enjoyed our podcast, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's brought to you by Vistity, the leading geospatial visualization platform for data-driven decisions. Stay connected, stay informed, and let's continue to shape the future of our cities together. Until next time, I'm Jamie Schwartzman.